Climate change is here and we need to act now. Well, now the question is, what do we do? And on the top of that list is transitioning from fossil fuel-based energy sources to clean energy. Hello and welcome, I'm Sadhika Tiwari and you're watching Eco India. While this sounds simple, it's not as simple. It's a little tricky, especially for countries which are some of the highest emitters across the globe, but the per capita emissions here are pretty low, like in India, where coal is not just a source of energy, it is also a source of livelihood for millions. And as we transition away from coal and to cleaner energy, ensuring that it is also inclusive and just will be very critical. So India is right now at a stage where our renewables are increasing, but so is coal. Experts say that India's coal demand will peak sometime in the next decade. So it's a process that will of course take time, but it has already begun. We can see this switch happening around us. Most of us would know of someone who has recently bought an electric car or an electric scooter. But what happens when an entire city tries to move towards this transition? Of course, it has its own set of challenges, but it is also an interesting journey. Watch this next story by my colleague Bahar Dutt to find out more.
With the click of a button, the wheels of change have been set in motion. 24-year-old Vidya is breaking gender stereotypes while also taking a step forward for the environment. She is amongst the first batch of women to be driving electric buses on long-haul journeys out of the city of New Delhi. The buses are part of an initiative by private company Renewable that operates one of the largest fleet of e-buses in the country.
When I'm on the road, all I think about is how my passengers can reach their destination safely.
India's transport sector contributes to nearly 10% of its total national greenhouse gas emissions. In order to make mobility green, ambitious targets have been announced. On my quest today, I'm curious to learn how can India decarbonize its economy while creating job opportunities for the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. How can women like Vidya be part of all that the new green economy has to offer?
The main problem starts at home. They ask whether I can do this. Especially as I look frail, people have doubts whether I'm up for driving such a big bus. They say it's a man's job, but work is work, and you just have to have the determination.
Women like Vidya and her colleagues will need support systems in place to ensure that the transition does not set them on a bumpy journey.
We got some women coach captains on board. We trained them over and above their training, and we did rigorous trainings. It took a lot of effort. Then we said that she's ready. Now let's do the first intercity in the entire world, which is Delhi to Agra. And we got this whole concept of women passengers, women coach captain, women cabin host coming in.
Mau Acharya, in her tenure at the Ministry of Power, focused on large-scale reforms. She was able to oversee the world's biggest auction for 5,450 electric buses, simply by changing the economic model.
First and foremost, we made it, mobility was being provided now as a service. So if the incentive in the right place means private developers are the people who look after the buses, are incentivized for efficiency. This model is what allowed us to achieve scale. Right? So suddenly from 200 buses, and where cities were ordering 50, 60 buses, maybe 300 buses, 300 was the biggest number, we go from that to 5,500.
At the same time, she also put in place several other conditions to ensure a just transition.
We asked that the buses be carbon neutral. We asked that the OEMs, that the equipment manufacturers go out and basically try and make sure that you count the greenhouse gas emissions. And if you were to offset with projects in India, we made special reservation or category emphatic reservations for women.
By 2030, the government intends to make all public transport as electric. Delhi's Transport Minister Kailash Gehlot has invited me for a glimpse of what a green ride looks like.
80% of the entire fleet, which will be around 10,500, 80%, so that will be around 8,000, will be electric buses, and this will be probably one of the highest in the world.
I'm curious to know what kind of infrastructure had to be created to ensure that the city is ready for green mobility.
Delhi is the only city where we are electrifying all our depots. Just for electrification of depots, we are spending more than 1,500 crores. And when we talk about the public charging stations, we have around 4,500 charging points already in place.
And yet, the sale of electric vehicles is still far behind. The share of EV still remains only 1% of the total market. India has made it clear that provided with the right financial support from the international community, the transition away from fossil fuels could be faster. The NTPC power station at Dadri, just on the outskirts of Delhi, is powered by coal that arrives directly from the mines located in East India. The energy security of the country and for most of India's economy still depends on energy from coal. I meet Arthik Khosla, who reminds me that India's energy transition must create job opportunities for people who are directly and indirectly dependent on coal.
It's quite exciting to talk about just transition as a global concept. In the end, it will come down a lot to how much upskilling and reskilling can we do for people, what kind of jobs we can offer, what kind of green economy constructs can we create in regions like these where diversified options exist for people. How can they be absorbed into agriculture which is productive? Can you create renewable energy complexes in these areas and those people can be employed? But these are all distributed ideas and they don't exist in any kind of policy and regulation, and perhaps that's where effort needs to be.
India's transition to clean, renewable energy will have its share of challenges. But people like Maua, Vidya, Kailash remind us that a new world is on its way. And a just transition must leave no one behind.
Just is a word derived from justice. It means fair. But fair to whom? And how can an energy transition be unjust? I headed to one of India's top coal producing states, Jharkhand, to uncover these details, to look at these mines, to put faces on this data that we read and to find potential solutions. So come with me to look at the present because it helps us understand this future that we're talking about. Let me tell you a story. Where we stand right now, this black land that you can see, it wasn't always black. It was once very green. Farmers would practice agriculture and sustain their families here. Until one day, their lives changed. They discovered that there's black gold under the land that they own.
Their agriculture fields vanished, but what jobs did the farmers get?
3 acres of land previously sustained an entire family, but they had to give up all their land and only got one job, and eventually they were left unemployed.
Jharkhand is one of India's poorest states. Most people here live below the poverty line. The state also has a massive indigenous or tribal population. Many here in Jharkhand depend directly or indirectly on the coal mines for their livelihoods. Are mines shutting down in Ramgarh?
Many have already shut.
I meet with 60-year-old Sunar Devi who lives in Ramgarh district. More than half of Jharkhand's coal mines have closed for various reasons. Many were simply not profitable. Sunar Devi, a mother of 5 and a grandmother, earned her money through the coal miners until the mine shut down a few years ago. In the absence of exact government figures, studies put the number of workers like her who depend either directly or indirectly on coal at between 4 and 10 million.
When the mine was working, everything was good. Everyone was comfortable and happy. Now many of us even go hungry. We would earn 400, 500 rupees at the mine. Now there's nothing. We work at construction sites. What else can day laborers do? We clean human waste from the gutters. We clean toilets just to earn a penny or two.
And do you get enough work for the week?
No, some days we have work, others not.
64-year-old Bijendra Prasad was once a young worker in the coal trade union. He has worked over the years to not only voice the struggles and demands of workers in the mines, but also those like Sunar Devi who were informally dependent on them.
Now they are forced to migrate. This is a common phenomenon in Jharkhand. Most people have to move. Some migrate to another state, some to another district, and some to a bigger city, some 10 to 20 kilometers away.
And those who can't migrate, how do they manage?
Many have to resort to illegally picking up this coal and selling it off. When a coal mine is shut down, the mine workers are transferred or given another job. But those who depended on the mine or were there to cater to the workers, like the tea stall, the small restaurant, the vegetable shop, the grocery store, the barber, all of them are rendered unemployed.
What's happening in Jharkhand might be a preview of what could happen nationwide as India moves away from coal. But right now, the country appears hesitant about reducing its coal production, just as it's hesitant about rehabilitating the workers. Here in Ramgarh district, people haven't seen any signs of a just transition. They say there's been no attempt to create fair job opportunities for all in the move to making the economy greener. They feel left out in the process. In most cases, no plans are made for when mines are closed. But occasionally, solutions are found, financed either by the government, the coal companies, or corporate social responsibility funds. The number of people that benefit is limited, especially compared with the number of those adversely affected.
Central Coalfields Limited, which is basically owned by the government of India and which in turn owns a lot of these coal mines in Jharkhand area, runs training centers like these. Now, training centers like these are supposed to train their own employees who work in the coal mines, but also they train other community members whose lands have been taken to create these mines.
These centers aim to train a few hundred people every year for alternate employment. Then there are some solutions that generate employment while helping to reclaim the land that was taken over for the mines and has just lain waste ever since.
We are right now in what was once a coal mine, and now it has been converted into a fishery. What you see behind me there, where we're headed right now, are small fisheries which have been created as an alternate employment sort of option for the project impacted people.
This mine was shut down in the 1980s, and after that, this facility was set up to provide alternate employment to the project affected persons. The state government started the scheme where fisheries could be set up in closed mines. Wherever water could be collected so that people can continue being employed.
So fisheries like this are an option in some places. But this alternative source of income is accessible only to a few households in the community. The government of India believes in a clean energy future through DRE, or decentralized renewable energy. This should be the way to go for small business owners who run their businesses on renewables like solar and generate urgently needed employment. At the same time, these business owners would contribute towards the national goal of adding 500 gigawatt of energy generated from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. This mill made the switch a couple of years ago and installed solar panels on the roof.
The three machines we saw and the milling machine run on solar power. 4 women from the village run this unit. The company is registered in the name of these 4 women. We withdraw the money from this account to buy the raw product, process it, and sell the pulses at the market. All profit goes to this account for the 4 women. The villagers previously had to take their wheat to the main market 3 to 4 kilometers away. 5 kgs or 50, there was no other option. And they had to pay more, for instance 20 rupees per kg, but we charge only 15.
In the foreseeable future, India has the potential to generate approximately 3.4 million jobs through the DRE program.
As we move away from fossil fuels to cleaner sources of energy as a country, we need to ensure that this transition is just. Those who work in these mines and several others who are indirectly and informally dependent on these mines are not really losers. They are not treated in an unfair manner, and we also take care of them as we move towards a cleaner future.
Corporate projects and government initiatives are certainly benefiting hundreds in these coal communities. But taking that number from hundreds to millions is the challenge that India faces to create a just transition for all.
So as we explored in our last report, the world is on a journey to phase out coal. But this will need careful planning and execution, and everyone has their own blueprint about this. The considerations are different, the strategies are different, and even the timelines for different nations are different. So let's take a look at all of these plans that the various nations have, the politics that surrounds these plans, and the learnings that we have.
When it comes to renewable energies, India has ambitious goals. The government is investing massively as part of efforts to become climate neutral by 2070. But it's complex, as millions of jobs depend on coal. India is also importing coal from abroad to satisfy its growing energy needs. Analysts expect these imports to decline, but assume the country will continue its domestic production.
What we hear in India especially, it's not so much the speaking about a coal phase out, but they speak of a coal phase down, they speak of a coal transition, which sometimes also means that they don't want to exit coal entirely, but they could imagine the utilization of coal with CCS technology, which would then be basically of a coal power plant, and the emissions from the coal power plant are captured and stored underground. I don't think that this is a realistic choice, as even now globally we see that photovoltaic power plants, renewable energy, can actually be cheaper than coal power plants.
Indonesia is also hooked on coal. In fact, it's the world's largest coal exporter. Still, Indonesia aims to make all of its 17,000 plus islands climate neutral by 2060, but its policy is contradictory.
So basically part of their paradigm is also, well, we will maybe stop using coal, but we still export coal to our neighbors, which will then have emissions in their countries. Indonesia itself has a lot of potential for geothermal energy, for photovoltaic, etc. But at the moment, we see very little implementation yet of photovoltaic, for example, because there is limited possibility to enter the market.
The United States will also have to say goodbye to coal long term. The plan right now is to take all coal-fired plants offline by 2036. But some states oppose the plan because of the many jobs tied to the industry. Still, it's well recognised that renewable energies are a lucrative option too, and their use is increasing.
We see some federal states, such as, for example, Texas, where you would think that they are basically loving their fossil fuels. There's also a lot of businesses who basically realize they can make a lot of money with wind farms, with photovoltaic farms, because Texas apparently has a lot of sun, it has a lot of wind, it has a lot of space, and a lot of people don't care what you would build there in these open spaces.
Germany also wants to phase out coal within the next 15 years at the latest. Right now, it's still needed. With its sizable industry, Germany still relies on coal for 40% of its power supply. The country could transition to renewable energies more quickly, but the process is fraught with challenges.
Therefore, standardizing procedures, taking care of environmental concerns, taking care of also of humans, of preferences, not building too close to villages, taking care of animals, also using the potential not only onshore but also offshore wind energy. These are additional elements that we are currently working on.
China is the world's largest CO2 emitter. Its enormous economic growth in recent decades has been powered by huge amounts of coal. But China too has discovered that renewables can be lucrative and is even a global market leader in the sector.
They basically aim for 2060 full decarbonization of their society, which is very ambitious if you consider its pace where it's coming from. And China has shown within their 5-year plans that if they want something, they're able to basically meet these targets, maybe also at the cost of additional aspects such as social elements, equality, democracy. So there's a lot of other aspects to criticize behind these things.
South Africa still gets nearly 90% of its electricity from coal. But 7 years ago, the government included the coal exit in its national development plan. The World Bank estimates it'll cost South Africa nearly 550 billion euros by 2030. So without investment partners or private donors, it's unlikely to succeed.
As I mentioned in our report from Jharkhand, DRE or distributed renewable energy is an upcoming solution with a lot of hope. To me, DRE is decentralized power, both as an energy source and hence also enabling economic and social power. Of course, it has its own constraints, but it has created some major impact in remote villages across the country.
It's something of a special day. Shailendra Bahadur Singh from Bhitargaon in Uttar Pradesh is harvesting the last pumpkins of the season. He has picked up several hundred kilograms in recent days. The vegetables ripen faster than he can sell them. So for years now, he has taken his entire harvest to a cold storage facility.
I used to have losses. Imagine I have to throw away 10 kilos of vegetables. In the case of ladyfingers, that would cost me rupees 300. Now I store them here for rupees 5 and sell them at the wholesale market or local market a day or two later.
Across India, a large part of the harvest still spoils every year before it can be sold. There are now thousands of cold stores which should prevent losses, but it's not quite that simple.
It is not like in the city where the electricity supply is constant or power cuts last just a few minutes. If the transformer malfunctions, the power might be off for 5 days.
That's why Satish Kumar Mishra powers his cold storage facility using biomass from harvest waste. This means he's not dependent on electricity from the national grid, a huge bonus for the farmers who store their harvest here. Green electricity generated right where it is needed. It is what experts call decentralized renewable energy or DRE. Abhishek Jain of the Council on Energy, Environment and Water has examined how DRE could help in rural areas.
Look at the rural communities. I mean, they need energy not just for their households, for the daily chores, but also need energy for a lot of the economic activities, be it to power their machinery to process the grain into flour, their fruits into pulps and juices and squashes.
By 2030, India plans to generate 500 gigawatts of electricity a year from renewable sources. That's more than 3 times as much as now. Analysts say DRE projects alone could provide clean energy to some 37 million people. Right now, only a few thousand benefit. That's partly because farmers struggle to get loans for DRE technologies.
If you go to a banker and say, okay, please give me a loan for a solar dryer, they'll be like, what is it? A banker has never seen a solar dryer. They do not know how to evaluate a credit application for a solar dryer. Like whether this is a viable loan for them to give or not, they have no idea.
1,000 kilometers away in the village of Kardapal, women are learning to produce silk yarn on machines. This should allow them to become financially independent. A DRE project right next door, in the shape of solar panels, is supplying the electricity for each machine.
It consumes only 15 watts power, so that's why it's very easy to run it on solar power. With a 40-watt solar panel, we are able to run this machine for about 8 to 10 hours and at the same time charge a battery. So when it can be run during the dark hours or when there's rain or anything.
The Indian government subsidizes renewable energy solutions, paying up to 30% of the costs for the initial outlay. But experts are calling for more. especially when DRE technologies are used to generate income. One idea is to expand and combine existing government programs.
If you are promoting a flour mill, you promote a DRE powered flour mill. Why not if you are promoting a cold storage, you promote a renewable powered cold storage. So by bringing that policy convergence, we can see a lot more deployments on the ground.
Generating power regionally, exactly what is needed. For millions of people living in rural areas, DRE presents a clear opportunity to improve their economic well-being.
As the world transitions into clean energy, there are going to be several other transitions like social or economic that will follow. But ensuring that there are no losers along this vast journey is going to be a major challenge for developing countries. You let me know, what do you think and what stories would you like to see more of? You can email us or reach out to me directly on my social media. I will see you next week. Until then, take care. Goodbye. Namaskar.